Making a blockbuster video game based on the character and story that's already well known by over a billion people on the planet sounds like an easy win for any investors. But to be able to break into the Western world where Chinese mythology and deities are still less recognized is another great undertaking. That's why not many people have attempted it. Not until now. The reveal and birth of Black Myth Wukong seems to have come from nowhere and also a long journey at the same time, just like what's been written about Wukong's destiny in the original story, Journey to the West. Game Science's first AAA title is also very much such a journey. Now, after completing Black Myth Wukong, I can finally share with you my thoughts on this game. Know that to be able to mark this game in all aspects, there will be areas and bosses in the late game shown in the footage. So to avoid spoilers, you're welcome to come back to this video later or just listen to the audio if you're still finishing the game. Also, a quick shout out to the marketing team sending me the game code on PC for me to play on the launch day. Now, without further ado, let's start with the graphic. I remember first seeing the announcement trailer and gameplay showcase back in 2020. I was shocked by how beautiful it looked. I was in disbelief how a lesser-known studio at that time could produce something mature like that on their first try. But now, having the game running on my machine, looking at it in front of my eyes, I can finally say, well yes, the game is indeed breathtaking. And as of recording of this video in 2024, it's one of the most beautiful games out there on the market. And I also don't see many upcoming games could surpass it. Game Science artistic department took a realistic approach. All the environment elements are designed and built in a way that reflects what they should look like in reality. The first area in Chapter 1 is a beautiful mountain with trees and small streams flowing down, and you can hardly notice any reused asset. Walking around in this area feels like going on a hike, but with perilous enemy on the way. Now, bear in mind that this is not an open world game. Each level is quite linear. The path your character should follow is guided by paved roads or invisible barriers to prevent you from jumping up a hill or off a cliff. So it's not a wherever you see you can reach type of game. But that's not to say you won't get lost. There are multiple shortcuts and hidden areas in each of the zones that could easily take hours to fully explore. Additionally, you also don't see the white, yellow, or any bright color paint to mark the area you should interact with. You just have to walk up to it and take a look up close. Some of my favorite parts were walking upstairs in the temples on the mountain. Watching leaves falling with birds singing in the background is tranquilizing and immersive. I also want to praise the boss arena designs. Some of them are so beautiful that they can even be distractive. Imagine an epic boss fight in a vast serene beach, with sunset casting warm lighting on the water, making it like a giant mirror. Water splashes with each attack lands on it and quickly goes back to its tranquil state. I almost don't want the fight to end, however much pain this boss was causing me. The natural environment and architecture are obviously inspired by real-life locales and historical buildings in China. It's a nice change of scenery for me after playing so many other games that are based on northern mythology or medieval landscapes. From lush forest, sandy desert to frozen lake and snowy mountains, the game nailed it on its graphic at full mark. There are also iconic locations that come directly from its source material. For example, there's a cave filled with spider webs and insect-like monsters, the Webbed Hollow. And this place brings us to the performance of the game. Now, here's when I should disclose my setup. I'm playing on PC at 4K resolution with a decent mid-range build. I have most of my settings at very high with DLSS on performance and ray tracing off. This is how I usually set up my games. For most part of the game, I indeed get a consistent 60 frames per second. There were a few frame rate drops here and there during the first 3 chapters, but they were never below 40. However, it's when I enter the spider's cave, things started to go bad. This location does look like a rendering intensive area, so I'm not surprised to sometimes get noticeable frame drops. Not to mention the monsters here are so tedious, I wanted to leave as soon as I entered the area. It somewhat reminds me of Blighttown from Dark Souls. Thankfully, this was the only area I had issue with, so it didn't cause big performance concerns in the grand schema of things. But I would say you will need a top-of-range graphic card to allow this game to realize its full potential. Additionally, I do feel certain loading areas can be slightly longer than I'm used to when the game is installed on the M.2 SSD. And there are also certain cutscene transitions that feel unnatural and laggy. In terms of bugs, I personally haven't encountered any crash or major problem. There were small issues with lighting and texture in certain areas, and object models sometimes overlap with characters. The stuff of our character, for example, always sticking to the ground in neutral stance, but these are all minor complaints from an otherwise well-polished product. So for the overall performance, I give it a B+. Now, let's get to the core part of the game, the combat. There's only one type of weapon, staff. Unlike other traditional weapons we're used to from other action RPGs, such as swords, axes, or hammers, staff is about building up momentum and delivering multiple light hits or delayed heavy hit. You can perform the full light attack combo by pressing the button continuously up to 5 times. Each time the attack animation will transform and hit longer, with its final attack being a heavy overhead slam, which is the main damage dealer. However, if you're interrupted during the combo, you will have to start over again. So the idea is to understand the enemy's movement well enough and find the perfect window to pull off the full combo for that final hit. As the attack lands, a focus meter will accumulate. When it's full, we get a focus point, which can be spent on heavy attacks. Each focus point we have will bring up the damage and transform the heavy attack animation. It has some similarity to the longsword mechanic in Monster Hunter. Now, to make it a bit more complicated, the devs also introduced a stance mechanic. There are 3 stances in total: smash stance, the bread and butter for close combat, especially satisfying to use when you can read the boss attack very well. It has the highest damage output for its heavy attacks, and you can also charge the heavy attack while moving. Pillar stance will allow us to perch on top of the staff, and the staff grows higher as we charge the attack. It's especially useful when avoiding ground-based attacks, but it's not an out-of-jail card. Taking enough hits will still deplete stamina and eventually topple us. Thrust stance is basically the range attack of this game. You can use this to interrupt an enemy's attack with heavy poke. It's more of a defensive playstyle, but you can only charge it in stationary, so I normally only switch to it when I already have more focus points. As you level up, unlocking certain skills will also unlock more combos for each stance, which are called varied combo. They are heavy follow-ups to light attack combos that consume focus point, and they vary depends on what stance you are on. Now, can you use only one stance to complete the entire game? Absolutely, but you might be missing out on a lot of satisfaction. The game also encourages you to use different stances by having weapon attributes that boost damage of certain stance. And some boss fight can become much easier when you realize what stance counters them. One thing I feel could have been done better is, I wish there were combos that can seamlessly transform into other stances, instead of having to manually switch between them on the D-pad. This will make the combat much more fluid, not that it isn't already is. But overall, the melee-based combat with a wooden stick feels surprisingly satisfying. Each hit strikes true with fantastic feedback, especially when you nail the perfect dodge and the full attack combos. Now, in addition to the melee combat, we also get magic skills. They are largely support skills such as immobilization, which can freeze enemy for some free hit, and claw stabs that turn you invisible for a brief moment. This could make almost all encounters much easier if fully used, but you can't abuse them either. They all have cooldowns and there are not many direct ways to recover mana during the combat, so using them at the right time during a fight is also the key. One thing very unique is what's called a transformation. A few rare bosses can be found throughout the game that grant the ability to transform to the boss we have defeated. This is linked to the lore very nicely, as based on the source material, Wukong himself could transform into 72 different things. I only wish we could actually get 72 of them. But among the few, my favorite has to be the Yellow Long transformation. In this form, you can use combos to counter enemies' attack. When the timing is right, a focus point will be rewarded. With all 3 focus points, you can summon the Dragon of Lightning, pull off the most damaging combos, the Death Trilogy. I always get an adrenaline rush from it. As an action RPG, this game certainly gets an A rating for action. Now, as for the gameplay, the first thing I want to cover is the difficulty. Well, it's definitely easier than Shadow of the Erdtree, if you need a comparison. But difficulty is a very subjective topic, so let me describe to you how it works. In each chapter, you will encounter mobs as you travel towards your target. Most of the small mobs have low health and can be easily dispatched within 1 or 2 combos, and it's very rare that you have to face more than 2 of them at the same time. So you will have an easy time traveling between bosses while taking in the beautiful landscape. Even if you do die, you won't lose any experience or currencies, so there's no harsh penalty either. The mobs will respawn, however, giving you a chance to take revenge. But when you do face off with the boss, there are quite a lot of them in this game, that's when things get a bit more complicated. Each boss has multiple attack patterns, some even have delays, tracking, or AoE effect. It could take a few tries to have a full reading on all of them. The tricky part here is to be able to dodge attacks and still be able to finish the full combo. A hit and run strategy will sometimes work, but be very inefficient. The game also has a difficulty spike from its chapter 4. From then on, bosses tend to have longer combos, further attack range, higher damage, and bigger health pool. So there is a high chance you will get stuck on certain bosses for a while. Additionally, the game doesn't have mechanics to artificially lower the difficulty, such as a story mode, and you won't be able to summon your friend in-game to help you either. So when you get stuck, you're truly stuck. What the game does offer, however, is the ability to respec at no cost. This allows us to try different builds and playstyles. There were a few bosses I had trouble with, forcing me to completely respec a few times, and when I do defeat them, my heart is pumping so fast and the sense of achievement is priceless. Additionally, the game also allows travel between the chapters and areas you have visited before, so when it comes to that, you can always decide to continue the main story and come back to the boss by over-leveling, but it will only work for some optional bosses. One of the best things I like about this game is its massive optional content, and they are also mostly hidden from the plain sight. There are clues and nuances in NPC dialogues and item descriptions, and we were left with no clear instruction on how to find them. It does make the exploration more interesting. The optional quests feel more like puzzle solving than checking off a list. And when you do discover those secrets, the rewards are always great and worthwhile. For example, you can get certain rewards called vessels from such hidden contents, and these items can be used to hard counter chapter end bosses and trivialize the fight. This is also quite lore accurate, as Wukong himself has indeed relied on the same items to pass those trials in the original story. Additionally, there are even different endings and final boss fights locked behind such secrets. My first playthrough took just under 40 hours, and I am nowhere from completing all the secret contents, so jumping straight into a New Game Plus cycle was a no-brainer for me. The overall gameplay, Wukong well deserves an A+. Now, we finally come to the story and narrative. The game starts with a classic stripped from all power openings, a flashback of how legendary Wukong was, and you are a muted protagonist that starts from nothing. You are set up with a clear goal straight up from the beginning, collecting 6 lost relics from Wukong, which naturally separate the entire game into 6 chapters. Each chapter's main plot is an individual story, which is a retelling of the same story from its source material, Journey to the West, as if you are tracing the same journey that Wukong has taken on before you. At each chapter's end, we also get to watch a masterfully crafted animated short film that tells more about the characters and background. Some of these short films were so well done, they could easily be part of a Netflix short series themselves. But the issue is that the vast majority of the players from the West wouldn't have read the 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West, or know the characters and their background stories, so it will be difficult to relate to them with the limited time of character building allowed in the game. However, if by any chance you know the original story well, and have a chance to live in China during summer school holidays when the adapted TV show gets broadcasted on national television in repeat, you will be in for a treat. It's amazing to see those iconic locations rendered in great detail, and listen to the epic music remade for modern audiences. This new journey gets a B for story, but full mark for nostalgia. So, did Black Myth Wukong pass its trials? Yes, absolutely. When the credit rolled, I was amazed by how small the development team is. They have no doubt taken a spot among the top gaming studios in the industry with their debut. If it's not already obvious, this game is absolutely worth buying and is a must-play for any action RPG gamers. And that concludes my review of this game. I hope you find this useful. Please leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.